Hello, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. Let's talk about the New York Equal Rights Amendment. My name is Barbara Grosh, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of the Rochester metropolitan area. The League is a nonpartisan organization. We never endorse either parties or candidates. However, we do have a whole long list of positions that we take on all kinds of social issues. And I can't think of anything more relevant and wonderful to us than an equal rights amendment, right? This is why we worked for the right to vote all those years. So, a few housekeeping notes. So I've enabled closed captions. So if you need those are available. We are recording this webinar and it will be posted on our YouTube station within a day or two, and I'll send an email with a link to everyone who registered. Um, we we are leaving the chat open because we want to have a lively exchange of ideas about how to publicize the ERA. So you can put your ideas in the chat either now or later when we open up the discussion. And finally, no, this is a very delicate topic that people have strong feelings about. Equal rights for everyone. It's not universally loved, nor is bodily autonomy and full health care rights. So, there's the possibility that we might get a Zoom bomber tonight. So we've got three of us who are on the alert looking for that and ready to jump into action. So if anything surprising or distressing happens, please stay calm for a few minutes. It shouldn't take more than a minute or two to sort it out, and we will get them removed and we can get back to work on this important mission that we're all on. All right, so do we have the slides being shared? We do. So the League of Women Voters of New York State has endorsed the New York State Equal Rights Amendment, otherwise known as Proposition 1. So we're in favor. So we're not really here to debate it. We're here to help you understand what it entails and then to talk with you about how we can promote it. We also have guests tonight from Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. We've got Lauren Lamagna there. And we've got Kay Williams from the New Pride Agenda, and we've got Abby Feldman from Ignite the Vote, which seems to me to be a young people's group. I don't know if it's college students, but we're really excited to have young people joining us. So I'm going to turn my own camera off and turn it over to Stephanie Watson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Can you hear me? I'm just doing a quick hearing check. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me or nod your head or something. Perfect. So what we're talking about, Barbara did an excellent job in introducing this very, very, very important proposition that we have coming up this November. It's so critical that we get the word out because we want to remain in control of our bodies. I mean, reproductive, we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to determine or help determine what happens with the pregnancy and all that good stuff. So just to recap what you see in front of you right here, we want to make sure that we are constitutionally protected classes, race and religion. We want to add in the Equal Rights Amendments, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. These are things that we talk about, probably not using that type of verbiage, but it's in our day-to-day activities. And we take it for granted that it's going to be there. But this is the opportunity for us to be ahead of the curve right here in New York State. So come November 5th, this is a key. Flip over that ballot. Let's vote. Go on to our next slide, if you don't mind.
Just really quickly, I see in the chat that there might still be people in the waiting room. So whoever is monitoring the waiting room, just continue to let folks flow in as folks join. Steph.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
So the New York Equal Rights Amendment Proposition 1 will extend protection against discrimination beyond what is specified in the federal Constitution. Do we understand that we're going to go beyond what is already specified across the federal government, across all other states? Again, New York State is trying to lead the path and making sure that we're all protected right here in our state of New York. So as we can see, we have quite a bit of information here. So I don't think we need to ask the question, is the Equal Rights Amendment necessary? I think we're all on this call and we believe that it is. So we know the importance of it. And we do have these laws that are protecting us, but we want to go one step ahead of that. We want it to be locked into the New York State Constitution. So we're not up here all the time having to vote for something that we should automatically be given to. We should automatically have these rights. So we can't voice it enough. I'm pretty sure you're going to start seeing flyers coming around with this information. Marla has her pins. We're going to be really pushing this out here for November 5th so we can get this out. Oh, let's go here. There's a message in our chat. Yeah, no problem. There was a message in the chat about the verbiage. I wanted to address that. Does the ballot language include the terms abortion and LGBTQ? Yes. It says well, not the term. I don't think it says the term abortion.
It does
the pregnancy outcomes, right?
Yeah, it says pregnancy outcomes and gender expression identity. It does not explicitly mention abortion. Or LGBTQ.
Right.
We all would have liked it to be in there, but it is not.
So that might be a typo in there.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Several people looked it over and didn't find it. Okay. I would now pardon? I would now like to ask Lauren LaMagna, who is the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations at Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York, and Key Williams, Director of Advocacy and Strategic Initiatives of the New Pride Agenda, to go into some examples of what might be applied and some specific ways how this amendment is so important to us. Thank you.
I would like to pass it to you first to start us off, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. So my name is Key Williams. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives at New Pride Agenda. We are a statewide organization that focuses on the intersections of both advocacy and community programming. And we're a statewide organization. And so I start there just to say that, when it came to the opportunity to join in on the importance of really what we are saying, make New York, New York for real, right? Make New York a safe state in all of its proclamations and all its declarations of being a transformative, safe state. We're saying make New York, New York. And part of how we see that happening is through passing the Equal Rights Amendment this November 5th. As Stephanie just said, make sure you flip your ballot, Proposition 1, and that is the language that will be on your ballot. It will not say Equal Rights Amendment, it will say Proposition 1, right? But to know that that is one and the same thing. So just a little brief, dirty public education there, right? And then the importance of the language and how it's set forth. So no, it does not currently have, and there is, as was shared in the chat, a lawsuit still being pressed to add explicitly the language of abortion and LGBTQ rights onto that language. But if that doesn't happen for us at New Pride Agenda, that's okay. because we understand that the impact of passing the Equal Rights Amendment will do what we need it to do, which is provide the protections that were outlined on the previous slide, right? And so Lauren and I would like go back and forth and think through and talk through like some of those things. So it's not just it's gonna do things that currently the New York State Constitution only protects race and religion, which is kind of crazy, right? But one of the reasons why the Equal Rights Amendment is so important is that by adding things to the state constitution, it solidifies it in a way that regardless of who comes into office, regardless of who comes into power, regardless of which way the state swings, red or blue, these protections are statewide in our constitution. And as difficult as it's been for us to get the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution, it'll be double as hard to get it pulled out of the Constitution, right? And so I just want to like name that and say that we do have a ripe opportunity to provide protections in our state constitution, as Stephanie said, around ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and bodily autonomy. So all of those things embody, right, and create a more inclusive New York State in the ways in which we need for everybody. And so I just start off by saying, like, our goal here, yes, as an LGBTQ organization, but our goal here is to really challenge that, right, to make New York, right, and to like let New York set the precedence for what it means to actually be a state that is for everybody, and a nation that is trying to move forward, right? As we hear all over the place across the country, especially in the past few weeks, about what is the future of this country. And New York has an opportunity to do something really remarkable and really transformative by passing this ballot initiative. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Lauren, to just like go through some of the bullet points about like how this would impact people specifically. And I can come back in and talk more about the impacts as we frame it for the LGBTQ community as well.
Incredible. Thank you for setting up this discussion in that framework. I think it's incredibly important. And you're right, we have an opportunity here in New York to make some really significant impacts, not just for people living in New York right now, but everybody who's going to be living in New York to come, especially in a time where across the country, we're seeing states roll back protections for many groups of people, and we're seeing those rollbacks of protections happen at the federal level as well. We can't rely on the federal government to protect us, right? We need to make sure that New Yorkers are protected, like he said, regardless of who is in office. An example I have of really positive legislation that has happened in the recent past, particularly when it comes to abortion rights, right, is the passage of the Reproductive Health Act back in 2019, right? So the Reproductive Health Act was passed in 2019, and what that did was upgrade or raise up New York State's abortion rights to match what was protected under Roe v. Wade at the federal level, because we knew that Roe v. Wade at the federal level wasn't always guaranteed. The really amazing thing about that is that now New York State has Roe v. Wade protections in law. But the flip side to that is if anti-abortion elected officials have the majority in our state government, they could pass another piece of legislation that could change that, right? And so if we are able to pass the New York State Equal Rights Amendment, we will have another tool in our tool belt to make sure that protections like the Reproductive Health Act or other types of rights that are in law do not get overturned because of discrimination. And so what is important to remember here, and I think that he talked about, you know, all New Yorkers, and I want something that is really unique about the Equal Rights Amendment is that it shows that we are protecting all people, and all people have intersecting identities, right? So while we're naming that the Equal Rights Amendment does protect against discrimination on the basis of age and disability, LGBTQ communities, and access to reproductive health care, we also have to remember that there are LGBTQ people who get pregnant, right? There are LGBTQ people who get old or have a disability, right? So all of our intersecting identities show up in this legislation and in this ballot measure, which is incredibly important to recognize that our fights are united, and our fight for protection against discrimination is not a singular siloed fight. We are all in this fight together. And so, what are some examples of how this could work? I want to name very clearly that the Equal Rights Amendment, or Prop 1, would protect people against discrimination by the government. And so, some examples of how this could work is it could prevent our state government from implementing a state abortion ban, which almost half of all states have done since Roe v. Wade has been overturned. It could prevent the state legislature from ending state funding for abortion care in the Medicaid system, which is how many people access abortion. The right to do something has very limited meaning without access. So it would also prevent laws and legislation that would result in, reducing state programs from accessing sexual and reproductive health care. It would hopefully address some of the persecution and criminalization of pregnancy outcomes, including miscarriages. It would prevent adding medically unnecessary burdens on patients and facilities, which is one of the most common ways politicians try to interfere with reproductive health care. Rolling back,
forget that elevator. You don't actually need an elevator in this building at all, right?
Exactly.
It's like these really minor, weird things that we don't think about when it comes to like the way that laws are passed or policies are passed. But it's
right.
like actually, what does that care look like to go through a medical process? I need access to an elevator because you can't move after a surgery. Oh, I imagine who that's impacting. So like these types of like backdoor opportunities, like is part of what we're trying to prevent with the Equal Rights Amendment. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a great example, because I think that in like common reproductive healthcare language, we call them TRAP laws, and they're called TRAP is an acronym for targeted regulation against providers, against abortion providers, right? So it could be something as small as abortion providers need to have hallways that are this wide, and now your hallways are 6 inches too thin because somebody decided that that was necessary, right? Some politician decided that was necessary. So adding medically unnecessary burdens on patients or facilities is something that hopefully that the Equal Rights Amendment will provide a tool for people to fight against that. Rolling back protections of New York State's marriage equality, protections for people with discrimination, for disabilities. It would hopefully, and I'm saying hopefully because I'm giving all of these examples, but the fact is that it's not helpful to always think in hypotheticals, right? We don't know what's coming down the line. We don't know what potential politicians are going to do. What we do know is that the Equal Rights Amendment would make it so that discrimination on the basis of race, religion, and these newly added protected classes would be in place and have another tool for people to use to fight against government discrimination, whether intentional or not. Sometimes policies are created and there is an unintended impact on a certain group of people because we live in a society that is prioritizes people who are able-bodied, prioritizes people who are heterosexual, and all these things are not necessarily intentional. And so it's always important to remember that this tool that we have if passed in November, will protect against both intentional and unintentional discrimination by the government. Did I miss anything, like any key points? Sorry for
miss
that
any
one.
key
I hope
points.
that you
No,
don't get
it
any time.
happens
I just feel
every
like a
day.
jerk for just doing that.
It happens so much in my life. It's totally fine. Honestly, we live with it, right? I mean, no, I think that this is a really good slide just to show again some of the ways that we are trying to get the ERA passed in order to work in the operation of application or prevention from the state government, right? And I think that like part of the culture of New York is like we really don't know how good we have it until it's gone. And I think that was the
Yes.
biggest thing with Roe, right? Was like we didn't really know how good we had it until it was gone, and then there was this panic. And so we're trying to build in some preventative measures and some protections, again, with the emphasis that it seeks to ensure that everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of sex, regardless of age or disability status, that you're treated equally under the state law. And I think that previous slide around like, is it necessary? It kind of is like, yes, it actually is necessary. It's necessary because it puts it within the law. It puts it in black and white. It's no longer just this cultural assumption that if I'm in New York, I'm okay, right? It's actually there written in black and white. And that's like super important for protections to come. And yeah, I mean, I think that like, we don't need to belabor it beyond that, but I do think it's really important that New York State set a precedent, right? And reinforcing and then potentially influencing broader national movements towards equality and non-discrimination to kind of fight back a little bit, right? We've been whining, we've been just like crying, we've been licking our wounds for so long. It's like this actually allows us to fight back a little bit, and hopefully allows some of that ignite. Shout out Abby. See how I did that? See how we can all
Look at
flow
that.
here and together real good, right? Hopefully it ignites some of that mobilization across our neighboring states, right? Or national states to say like, you know what, New York did it, why can't we? And New York has been behind the curve for a very long time. Like New Yorkers do a lot of like patting on the back, but we are so behind.
Yes.
And I think it's a good opportunity in this very, very right moment for transformation to really do something that is actually so simple but so bold in this moment. And all the conditions are right for that possibility. And then I think lastly, the last thing that I'll emphasize is that like, and maybe you want to build on this. I already asked Marla, we have a few more minutes than they gave us before. Don't fret about it. But I think that it would explain that voting yes is it's not just about legal rights. It's not just about legal rights, but it's about also affirming the value and dignity of every individual, right? And I really want to emphasize that, right? That it's not just about legal rights and passing policy. Voting yes is a real act of building community and a real act of solidarity across the different identities and intersections that we all live and reflect in. Is strengthening our community ties to each other. Is strengthening our opportunity to show up in solidarity with one another in real time, right? And so it's about affirming the value and dignity of every individual, right? To really show up. And it's really, the fact that it's Proposition 1 is kind of awesome to me, right? It's like top of the list. Like, what do you want to add to the Constitution? Like, number one, first thing first is I want to add equal rights to the New York State Constitution. That's kind of awesome, right?
Yep.
That's kind of amazing. And so as we're doing our get out the votes on all the different things, talking, about all the different topics that we're going to be talking about this November 5th, I think emphasizing like, the first thing that's like as a proposition, that's actually amazing. Laura, I turn it back over to you, but I feel pretty good about just like that outline of what it can and can't do. And if folks have other questions, we can continue to always chop it up and talk about it more. But I want to just like close this section about like what the Equal Rights Amendment does in real time. And I really appreciate your approach of it being an additional tool in the toolbox that we can fall back on.
Yeah, and to emphasize what you had just said about, it really is allowing people to show up in solidarity with many communities, and it's like you said, not just about legal protections, it's about our identity as a state and saying, we truly value everybody, then let's put some skin in the game. Let's put our backs into it. Many states, since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, have passed constitutional amendments protecting the right to abortion care in their state. New York is taking it one step further, and we do have an opportunity to be the leader that we like to say we are, but sometimes fall short on. And this constitutional amendment is the broadest constitutional amendment that has been on a ballot thus far across the country. And I think the phrase bodily autonomy is very much so tied a lot of the times to abortion care and pregnancy outcomes in general. But if we think about what true bodily autonomy can really mean. It's about living as your whole self, right? And adding these protections for people on the basis of all these different identities, right? Ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, disability. It allows people to show up in all of their complexities and all of their identities and be recognized by the state of a valued member of our society that deserves to be protected.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to turn it back over to Marla, but like I think in closing, just to pick up on what bodily autonomy is, it's like as we continue to really emphasize throughout the next, everybody's talking about the 90 days, right? As we continue to talk about the next 90 days when it comes to bodily autonomy, to remember that you have the right, all it means is having the right to make decisions about your own body, your own life, your own future without
Exactly.
coercion or violence. That's
Right.
simply all it means, right? That's
Yep.
simply all bodily autonomy means. But it's so powerful as we begin to reclaim the notion of freedom, right? As we begin to reclaim what it actually means to have freedom of choice and freedom of bodily autonomy and freedom to do what we want with our own selves,
Yes.
right? And for our futures. And so as we begin in this 90 days to really think about reclaiming freedom, which I know everybody is in there, right? And hear what I'm saying. I hope you hear what I'm saying. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down here, right? Is that the Equal Rights Amendment is one step further. And it is New York, again, as I said in the beginning, making New York, New York. And that is a big, big deal. So thank you so much,
I love
Marla.
that, by the way. I
You can
love
have
that.
it. Yeah, everybody can have it. Everybody can have it. It's for free. It's for free. All right, Marla, we're going to turn it back over to you and go through the next few slides, I think.
Thank you so much. I really like your definition of bodily autonomy and affirming the value and dignity of every individual. Thank you. And now we're going to talk about how we get the word out. And I know Lauren, Planned Parenthood has a lot of events. I couldn't list them all here, but you have a lot of events for phone baking and canvassing. And how can we find out how to sign up for those or where to find those?
That's a great question. So I'm going to be putting a link in the chat. It's going to bring you to a page that lists all of Planned Parenthood Central and Western New York's events. There's phone banking. There's eventually going to be door-to-door canvassing. A lot of different opportunities to have people get out into the community or call people within their community, let them know that the Equal Rights Amendment is on, or Prop 1 is on the ballot, and to flip their ballot over when they go either physically to the polls to vote or if they're voting from home via mail.
Thank you. And you do supply training to do these events?
Yep. So if you have any other groups that you're a part of, other social groups, organizational groups, or just a community of people in your lives, and you would like a teach-in or an info session about what the Equal Rights Amendment is, you can reach out to the staff at Planned Parenthood of Central Western New York, and they can absolutely set something up for you.
But also if you go to phone bank or if you go to Canvas.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Training.
You do not have to know how to phone bank. You do not have to know how to canvas. We always provide all of the information and the tools and the resources that you need to be successful, especially when it comes to door-to-door canvassing. Safety is our top priority. And so you will always be paired with somebody. You'll have the information that you need. We will never send you to a stranger's door by yourself. And so this is also a great opportunity for people to say, hey, I want to go door-to-door canvassing, and then ask somebody to come with you, right? Bring more people into this movement, because the more that we can talk to our community members, the more people that we can reach out to, the more people that we can encourage to flip over the ballot, the more concrete we can be that this is going to be successful and pass in November.
Thank you. And I will now plug League of Women Voters. We have buttons, which I'm wearing, that says, you probably can't see it, but it says, ask me about the New York ERA. And we have lots of these to give out. We also have flyers to pass out at community or personal events. Stephanie has a flyer right there that we'll be willing to pass out. I think somebody was invited to go to somebody's birthday party in the city and pass out flyers. which I thought was great. And we have some postcard writing events on August 13th at 5:30 at Bill Gray's at Seabreeze. We're going to be writing postcards that tell people, I think voters, and I'm not sure where they are, but registered New York voters, informing them about the ERA and asking them to please vote, turn their ballot over. And also at our First Fridays events, which are on the first Friday of the month, the next one is September 6th at 11:30 a.m. at I Square. We will also be writing postcards, and there will probably be other events as well. And please, if you're at Bill Gray's, do not spill ketchup on your postcard or coffee at I Square. But these should be good events. And I think Barbara, Stephanie, we will have them listed on our website as well.
Yes, we will.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So
Oh,
I would love to jump in here and
please do.
help us get the conversation going about
Okay,
what.
I think I have 2 more slides
Oh, sorry.
to address. I think this is
This is really brief. Yeah. So for New Pride Agenda, we are launching a Western New York chapter. We're really focusing on Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Rochester area. We also have, I don't know if it's the next slide. Do you want to go to the next
Yes.
slide? I don't know what it is. Yeah. The other way that we're doing it is that we created a campaign that went from Pride and beyond Pride, which is called New Pride in the Queer Era, right? So it's a little bit of a play on ERA, but also, right, playing on the timeline, right? Playing on the fact that like this is our era to get it right. This is our time and our opportunity and our chance to get it right. And so as far as a pledge, what we do is we go around, and I can drop the link to the pledge in the chat in a moment after I finish talking. But we just offer people the opportunity to say, like, either as LGBTQ community members or allies of the LGBTQ community, that you pledge to vote yes on the ERA. It's really that simple. But those are the 2 ways that we are doing it. So we're activating a Western New York chapter because a key fact is that like over 1 million people in New York State identify as LGBTQ. And what we know when we're looking at the targeted areas in the voting maps with the New Yorkers for Equal Rights Coalition is that there are different counties, right, that are turning more red. New York is turning more red, right? Brooklyn is turning more red, right? And so like we just need to be aware and conscious of the fact that we need everybody to win, right? We need everybody to win. So for us, yes, we're an LGBTQ organization, but we always, always, always say, and if you believe, right, that LGBTQ lives matter, if you believe that queer and trans people matter, that the Equal Rights Amendment, again, is an act of solidarity. So New Pride in the Queer Era, right, is again our play on the ERA, but also to say like the time is now to get it right for everybody in New York. So those are our 2 ways: is chapter membership. And Lauren, thank you so much for just dropping the Pride link pledge there in the chat for us.
Okay, thank you, Key. And Barbara, you wanted to plug something?
Well, I just wanted to say, most people don't know there's an equal rights amendment on the ballot, right? It's like a well-kept secret. So it really is our job to get the word out there. And, a couple of years ago, there were several constitutional amendments that the league had pushed for years. And as far as we knew, there was no opposition. And then suddenly in the last 3 days before the election, the Conservative Party spent $5 million in Western New York advertising, and they didn't pass. So we don't have same-day registration and a couple of other things. So do not take this for granted. So, have a party and invite your friends to stop by for a glass of lemonade and hand them a flyer and some buttons. I wear my buttons everywhere. I like to wear 2 or 3 together because it really does make people ask me about the New York ERA, and I end up giving away one of them to people regularly. Get a bunch of flyers and carry them in your purse. Turn all your friends and relations into advocates. And in particular, I want to mention that they've done a lot of surveys, and actually most people are in favor of the things that are included in this. So if they know about it, they'll vote for it. But there's a couple of particular groups that are far more excited about this than they were about the Trump versus Biden election or whoever else they were expecting to be on their ballots. I don't know how it'll be with Harris on the ballot, but so young people have a terrible turnout rate, but they're very excited about the ERA. And low turnout Democrats, they make or break elections all the time, and they are very much more excited about this than they are about candidates. They're distrustful about candidates, but they understand that the constitutional provisions really do matter. So those are two target groups. If you have avenues into those groups, be there and share it all the time. So that's what I wanted to add.
I would like to start addressing some questions I already seen. Somebody said, I've seen so little support on TikTok, but sadly see more transphobic anti-ERA TikToks, anti-ERA TikToks. Make your TikTok if you are able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is the algorithm, right? So the algorithm is going to populate what is viewing the most, right? And so the reason why you're going to see more of the oppositional content on your social media feeds, because that's the thing that does numbers, right? And that's how the algorithm works. But what we do know is that there's also an always opportunity to offer counter narratives, to offer counter TikToks, counter Instagram stories, counter excitement, and to really mobilize people and meet them where they are. And I think most importantly is continuing to preserve your energy, right? Like, don't argue with a troll, don't argue with a robot, don't get caught in the comments going back and forth. Preserve your energy and actually focus your energy on the folks who, the majority of people. I think there has been, you're right, Barbara, there's been some more energy, right, around getting out the vote and voting and excitement in those ways. And I think it's a good opportunity here in New York to also educate people and tell them about Proposition 1. Because one thing that I am seeing in different spaces, I just did a talk yesterday at Brooklyn College with the Sadie Nash Leadership Project, which is a small 6-week project that they do with Black and Brown girls here in New York who are between the ages of 16 to 18. And it was happening in the Women's Center at Brooklyn College. And out on the table is like all these materials, right? And then there's a stack of New York for Equal Rights postcards that we all have that were just sitting there, right? And I utilized that opportunity to just talk to the few older people who are in their 20s, right, who are doing organizing work, to just say, oh, did you know about the Equal Rights Amendment? It can really just be that simple and that casual. So it's not just getting the materials and setting them out somewhere. There's also opportunities for engagement. I also bumped into from the New Yorkers for Equal Rights Coalition this past Saturday at Astor Place here in the city. I bumped into Mabel and another volunteer who was like targeting people, handing out New Yorkers for Equal Rights postcards, and they were actually trying to like get my two friends who were with me to like sign up. And I was like, "What are you doing?" Aggravating them. And Mabel turned around and was like, "Kiki, I'm so happy to see you." And so it's about also building community. It's also about building relationships. It's also about having people be excited. And then Mabel was able to say like, oh, I know those two people that are with Key are going to vote for the ERA. I don't need to harass them anymore, because she knows that I'm educated enough to make sure that my community knows enough to pass Prop 1. So in terms of like not seeing a lot of support on social media and not seeing a lot of it, if you are a content creator, great. If you're not a content creator, get into it. I'm not a big content creator, actually. This is not my vibe. But I do have the opportunity wherever I am to talk about it. And that is the one thing that I do. So if that's being like Barbara, wearing your buttons, if that's getting a sticker, if that's getting a lawn sign, like whatever it is, if that's just like any other conversation, just take the opportunity, right, to just make noise about it as much as possible. And never be like or sad or disappointed or like, oh my God, I'm only seeing this one content. Remember, that's what the algorithm feeds off of, especially on social media platforms. It feeds off of views. And so it's only going to populate the more popular content, which unfortunately is the hate machine. And the opportunity to do something great and speak about greatness and speak about transformation and possibility, you're not going to see that much content. But yeah, so preserve your energy and activate the people who you think are neutral and are like on the sidelines, right? Like, if you just have a conversation with them, pushing the vote, but they're not really, moving. So the biggest slice of the pie is those who are neutral and then passive. Don't waste your time on folks who are transphobic, homophobic. They're already there. They're already there. And actually, they're the minority. When we do the data and we do the surveys, they're actually the minority, but they get the most views because they make the most noise, right? And so it's not about feeding into their negativity. It really is on maybe some like reading rainbow positivity, right? It's like feeding into the other side and mobilizing folks who are in that neutral wedge, because the neutral wedge is the most populated wedge. And so how do we get the folks who are just like neutral? How do we get the folks who are passive supporters to really get active supporters, right? How do we get those people? And how do we conserve our energy and not get into arguments with the trolls? Lauren, I saw you come off of mute.
Yeah. And I think the other thing in the same way that the social media algorithm feeds off of hate, lies that spread a lot quicker than truths. And so the sooner that you can talk about the ERA with your community members and with your family members, you are putting the positive things into the community, so that if somebody does start to hear the negative or the things that are false, that's not the first thing that they're hearing, right? They already know that the ERA and Prop 1 is the thing that's going to protect all people. It's the thing that they want to vote for, so that they're not swayed by the lies and the mistruths and the negativity. So the sooner that we can get out into the community and spread the positive word about the ERA, the more likely that those positive messages are really going to stick, and that those folks are going to spread the word. So the sooner that folks can start talking about this with their family members, so that we can do the snowflake model, right? Which is you tell 3 friends, and then those 3 friends tell 3 friends. And then all of a sudden your entire community knows about what the ERA is. We are doing this together, and it doesn't have to be calling 10 people, right? It's making sure the 5 people in your household or the 5 people that come over for family dinner know what they're talking about and know what the ERA is, so that when they run into their friend at the library or the grocery store or are standing around the physical or metaphorical water cooler at work, right, they get to tell the people in their circles. It's grassroots, right? It's how we show up for our communities.
So I wanted to mention that, there's been 8 states since Roe v. Wade was overthrown that have had abortion rights on the ballot, mostly, I think, maybe entirely for constitutional amendments. And every one of them has passed. The turnout's been incredibly high. So, and those were mostly in red states. So,
Kentucky, Ohio.
this is actually a popular cause, but people just need to know it's there so that they will get that turnout bump. And I got to also say that it's one of the easiest sells I've ever done since I got interested in politics. Like, we league members go out every week registering voters, and you really have to twist people's arms like, oh, I don't have time. It only takes a minute to fill out the card, but I don't have time, or I think I'm already registered. They're just full of excuses and reasons why they don't want to talk to you. But when I just sidle up to people with an ERA flyer and say, have you heard about the ERA? They're willing to talk to me. And then when they hear what's in it, they want a copy of the flyer. And sometimes they ask for extra copies they can share with their friends. And, maybe after 5 minutes, you end up with, so you'll vote for it? Oh, you're not registered? Oh, well, here's our table where you can register. And then they're happy to register. So I'm really actually I'm more optimistic about politics right now than I've been for a couple of years. And I also want to say that, like, I've talked to some people that I normally don't ever talk politics with, right? Somebody that I know, like, they're anti-vaxxers and they vote Republican, and they just it's never gone well when I talk to them. I just revealed that I'm a Democrat, even though we don't endorse parties. But anyway, the point is that when you get to talking about abortion, the truth is that people know that when you're pregnant and you didn't want to be, like, it's a problem. And everyone knows someone that's been in that situation. So I started a conversation with this person, and she was all for all the equal rights, and then she heard abortion and her face turned dark. She said, oh, that's so hard. And I thought she was gonna give me right to life stuff, but she started telling me stories about people she knew who were pregnant, who wanted their babies, but something was wrong. And we ended up just trading stories for 5 minutes about things that go wrong and why you need to be able to make your own medical choices. And, she was ready to vote for it. So don't write anyone off. It's actually really approachable.
And I think what's really
I
powerful
completely agree.
right now is that Planned Parenthood, disclaimer, Planned Parenthood Central Western New York is also a 501c3 organization and does not work with candidates or parties and anything like that. What's really powerful, I think, about Prop 1 being on the ballot this year is that somebody had mentioned it earlier. People are really skeptical of politicians. People are incredibly skeptical of elected officials and their ability to serve the communities that they represent in a way that actually serves them. One is an opportunity for the voter of New York to make policy changes, right? We don't have to go through elected officials to pass a bill. We did that already, right? Like, this is a direct way for New Yorkers to have a say in what the Constitution says. They don't have to wait for an elected official to pass a bill or to write a bill or decide that an issue is important enough to take up their time, right? That work's already been done. New Yorkers have a direct opportunity to say, this is what I want, right? This is how I'm going to change the state that I live in. And that is really powerful. And actually, in conversations that I have had with people about voter registration, updating their voter registration, and feeling motivated to go out and vote, this is what's motivating people to go out and vote, right? If they're skeptical of candidates across the board, if that's not the thing that's motivating people to go out and vote, this is it, right? There's a real sense of power here for individuals and individuals in New York to really make a difference. And so that has been my experience. And as someone who's been in this work for a very long time, it sometimes is hard to always feel motivated, right? Because the work is always continuing. And even for myself, this I have an opportunity to directly impact change and not have to wait for somebody else to do it is something that's incredibly motivating.
It looks like Abby Feldman
Awesome.
wants to say.
Yeah, so piggybacking off of everybody, this is a very inspirational conversation, but I think it's also like a mixture of those in-person conversations, but also social media. We do live in a very virtual time now, and especially for my generation, Gen Z, social media is really a one way to spread the word about voting. And that's what my program is doing, Ignite the Vote. Shout out to Alicia for showing me this program and being the president at our school at SUNY Buffalo. So, and she's here tonight too. If you want to say any words about our program, Alicia. But so our program, it's around like over 100 young people around the US who are posting on social media consistently to November to spread the word about voting. So that's one avenue. I'm not the biggest fan of social media activism. I think it's not always the most accurate information, but it is one way to spread information out there. But I'll send the link in the chat for our voting resources. If you want to check those out, we have requesting ballots, we have voter registration. And if any of you want to send those onto your social media platforms, feel free.
Yeah, I want to see what you guys put about Prop 1 on your social media because we'll share the heck out of that.
Yeah, we are a nonpartisan organization about voting itself, but since the ERA is on the ballot this year, then we'll spread the word about that. But yeah, Alicia, do you want to talk about anything or?
Hi, I'm Alicia. So Ignite National, as Abby was saying, is nonpartisan. So you don't have to be a part of a particular party. And you can sign up to be an Ignite the Vote ambassador who aims to mobilize your local community, but then also Gen Z by using social media. So like Abby said, that's just one way of getting out the vote. And they're actually having a summit this month. So all that information is in the link Abby sent, signing up and other voting resources. So it's a great opportunity. And if you know yourself would like to sign up or any young people, I definitely suggest sending that vote and getting involved. I think personally, just with my work with Ignite, I think it's a great organization. So yeah, I hope you guys can spread the word. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, make New York, New York. Thank you, Key.
I do have one question here. Oh, Barbara, you already answered it about what is the wording on postcards. And I've been to some other organizations' postcards writings, and some of them just say, this is for New York rights and equal rights. Please flip over your ballot. And I guess ours have specific wording. I haven't seen the cards yet. Do you have any more information about that?
Well, what we talked about, so we're sending out the postcards that the New Yorkers for Equal Rights Amendment put out. And instead of us writing in a couple of sentences, we talked about printing a sticker that just gave the short, pithy summary that is on the flyers that the league put out. So that's what the plan is.
Thank you, everyone. Now I want to turn it over to my friend Stephanie to lead the discussion on what we can do to get the word out, to kind of do some brainstorming here. We already have some great ideas, but to see if anybody
Yeah,
else
I was actually going through some of them. Like we're getting ready to respond to, there is someone is having a party already. They already got one planned. And I was saying, like, we need to just get your best contact information so we can arrange for a pickup, so we can link up to pick up. So if we can, everyone that has something planned already and they want some of these cool flyers or those cool buttons, please just make sure we have the best contact information that we can arrange for either one of the members of Legal Women's Voters to get that information to you or get the equipment to you, your buttons, your flyers, so you can hand out and have a good ERA party.
I think there's lots of groups around that like speakers to come to their meetings. And this could be either like the featured speaker or just a quick announcement at the beginning of a meeting. So I think lots of us are in organizations like that. So I encourage you to think about who needs a speaker.
I have put up a slide here that's who, when, where, what, and this is just a general guide to trigger your thinking. There's no right answers. But I think people should feel free either to just speak out in the meeting, or if they don't want to speak out, put something in the chat box. I am going to monitor it to see how we can reach more people. And I know personally, I won't say bothered my friends, I have informed my friends and I say, do you know what the ERA is? Every time we get together and they say, actually, no, I don't. So I tell them, and I tell them what it involves and tell them why we need it and encourage them. This is really important to encourage them to turn over the ballot, because a lot of people don't realize they have to turn over the ballot to find it. And once people know about it, they're really in favor of it. In fact, my husband heard today on the radio that most New Yorkers support this. It's just a matter of getting them to vote for it once they hear about it.
Judy Fay, I invite you to talk about your softball experience. You're muted, dear. Judy, you're muted.
Okay. I was a poll worker during the midterms, and when we gave out the ballots, we said you need to turn these over. There's this thing for clean air and clean water on the back. We didn't tell them what to do. We just brought it to their attention. And I think that they will do that at least. I mean, I was in Webster. They told us to make sure people knew there was something on the back. So hopefully poll workers will do that also. I've gone to my granddaughter's softball games and talked to the mothers there, even the opposing team. And when I went to the dentist, my dentist is female, and so are all her hygienists and her staff. So I just started talking with one, and they brought some mothers over, and they were all very interested. And today I went for a manicure because I pamper myself, and they were surprised to hear about it. They didn't know anything about it. So I think you can do it whenever you're around people that might really care. And I would think most people want equal rights. So I'll be at the postcard meeting on Monday and the first Friday, and we'll see what else people come up with.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in with ideas that they're having about how to get the word out?
How about an ERA bumper sticker that we can drive around with on our car?
That's
We
a
can
really
have,
good
say,
idea. Yeah.
vote Prop 1 and put ERA next to it so they know that it's called Prop 1.
Yeah, I would like to see yard signs too.
Yeah,
And I believe that the New Yorkers for Equal Rights are planning all these things.
good.
Sometimes it seems like they get a little ambitious in what they announce they're doing compared to what they're delivering, which
Yeah,
is
they said they're not doing any more postcards, at least the mail that I saw from Erica from yesterday. She said they're not doing any more postcards.
well, the postcards that they printed the first time, they made them so big that you have to use a full letter
Yeah,
stamp.
they
So,
said it's too expensive, so they're not doing anymore.
yeah. But the league is probably going to do both phone banking and text banking for the ERA. We've got the means to do that now, and I'm hoping to coordinate through the New Yorkers for ERA because I know there's other groups in town doing that, and I don't want us all to call the same sample, right? It would be good if we targeted a little bit. But I like those especially because the people who report their phone number to the BOE or are on the average younger than average. So given that I really want to reach young people, I think that's pretty cost effective.
I want to be put in a plug for speakers. And I'm either involved or my husband is involved in a number of different groups that are often looking for programming ideas. So I've said, I will be a program and I would like to talk to you about the ERA. And any of us are capable of doing that. So if you have a friend who's in a women's organization or somebody who's in a retirement group that gets together for coffee and discussion every week, like my husband is, asked to be a part of that. Tell them about the ERA, Proposition 1.
You just made me think of something. I love going out for breakfast, and I always see like these groups of men that are having breakfast together, which makes me happy because mostly men are lone wolves and don't have friends. But I might just stop at their table with my buttons and some flyers and say good morning to them someday. Yeah, Rotary is good. Kiwanis. There's a lot of groups. Book clubs are good. Basically, your whole darn social network is good. Elks would be good. I don't know any elks. I assume we have some around here, but so that's where each of us, has our own social network, and they're not all the same. And we should be serious about thinking who is my social network? Who do I talk to? And sometimes you can do it as a formal speaker, but with my buttons and my flyers and my purse, I can stand in the cloakroom at my synagogue or, if I was still in the PTA, I could definitely work a PTSA meeting. So think about where you are.
And I am happy to.
I have a question about the message. I put a couple things in the chat. I would like us to clarify what the exact message is, because all I've heard here tonight, and also what the postcard script is that the ERA would protect from government discrimination. But as far as I can tell, and I haven't seen the actual wording on the amendment, it prohibits any government, state or local, any business, any organization, and any individual from discriminating. I think that's an important point, and I think we have to know what it is when we have to say it clearly when we explain this and spread our message. So can you clarify that for me? Is this correct? I put something in there. I've taken it right off the Board of Elections website, and I put something in the chat there.
The message being that it's government discrimination.
It's not just government, it's more than that.
Okay, well,
I think that's an important point.
It is an important point. I've been quoting the New Yorkers for Equal Rights who say it as it's government, but I did wonder about that myself.
Well, go to the Board of Elections website. I copied and pasted into the chat from that website.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns, not necessarily concerns, I hear you on wanting to have clarity around what is and what isn't. I think the reason why the coalition and all coalition members, I think that all of us here are coalition members. I know Planned Parenthood is, I know that New Pride Agenda is, I'm pretty sure that you guys are as well, which is why you're being able to host this event, is wanting to make sure that we have consistent language. And so even if we do have, like right now, Laura, I appreciate you bringing up this insight that you're taking it directly from the Board of Elections page. But I think it'd be a good idea to make sure, that we're like being consistent in the messaging. And part of what we don't want to happen is people thinking that these protections in any way, because the complicated part, and maybe this is a little bit of political education background on the Equal Rights Amendment, is that New York has all of these piecemeal ways of already having these protections, right? And so part of why the Equal Rights Amendment as a factor going into the Constitution is as beautiful and radical as it is that it codifies it in one singular law in the state constitution. Right now, we have all of these small piecemeals. You have things in the human rights law. You have the gender laws. You have all these tiny, weird laws, reproductive healthcare laws, that doesn't do it in a really cohesive, collective way. And so the Equal Rights Amendment as currently framed, I think the reason why there's been emphasis around government bodies is to note that when it comes to concerns around interpersonal, one-on-one, right? That like, just because somebody calls you a slur on the street, how do you legally do that in application, right? So it becomes down, it's more so, I think the reason why the language is being framed, at least from the coalition messaging way in terms of government infrastructure, government bodies, is so that folks know that how it is going to be applied in the law. Transparently, we don't really know how attorneys and lawyers are going to be able to apply this in the law, right? We honestly don't know what is going to happen, but it's about getting it in there for the protections and then working through the actual application of it and the implementation of it and the aftermath, right? So I hear you on wanting to clarify that individuals and organizations and businesses can't discriminate. In New York State, you already can't do that according to the human rights law, right? But where does that actually go into place? Which commission, which human rights division, or employment division, which commission in the government do you go to like actually argue that, right?
Go to the Department of Wedding Cake Providers.
Right, like I hear you in terms of like how I hear you in terms of like sharing with folks that it protects against individual and it protects against businesses is more expansive and more helpful. But I think in terms of having a consistent, clear message for the sake of getting it passed is the reason why there's been just a consistent repetition of these things. And
well, if I'm talking to someone and if I'm really trying to rev up interest in having them get it passed, they'd want to know that their employer can't discriminate, not just the government. I think for a lot of people, the government is a small part of their life, and the employer or maybe some other organizations are a much bigger part of their life. So I'm wondering if the consistent message could include, could be broadened to more than just government discrimination.
Yeah, I see Lauren came up, but I will also just share that part of part of it is also kind of protecting yourself from opposition, right? And so in New York State, we have issues ongoing of folks who say, for example, when it comes to LGBTQ rights, I'm a Catholic healthcare provider. I don't want to have to give services to queer people. And then it gets into this like personal business conversation and conflict. And that's like part of like when we talk about these things in this way. Lauren, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to highlight that when we talk about the government, we're not just talking about legal policy, right? We are also talking about government agencies and government employers and the fire department, right? And other entities that do fall under the quote unquote government that not everybody thinks of, right? So if you work for New York State, that could mean working for the Department of Health or working for your local town government, right? So when we talk about discrimination, protection against discrimination by the government, we are talking about the larger government and not just policies. So that can also be helpful when talking to people about what we mean by protections against discrimination from the government.
Yeah. It's a really good point, Laura. I think that what will happen, and maybe I'm putting work on Barbara and Marla, but go back to the coalition and ask for clarity around this.
Well, actually, I've got the text of the amendment here from the New York League website, and it says, no person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of this state or any subdivision thereof. No person shall, because of race, color, ethnicity, blah, blah, be subjected to any discrimination in his or their civil rights by any person or by any firm, corporation, or institution, or by the state or any agency or subdivision of the state pursuant to law. So I think that there's a whole legal stuff about what our civil rights are that's been defined through both legislation and common law. So, you know, you've all heard the stories about the bakers who don't want to make gay wedding cakes. So, you know, they're still fighting that in courts. Like that's kind of like, I don't know, is that included or is that not included? It's not exactly illegal right that's ever been established that every baker in the state must make me a wedding cake, but it is discrimination. So I think the answer is that we're not in command. Like Lauren said, we don't know exactly how everything will roll out.
But I thought that's the whole point of putting this amendment in the Constitution, so it then can be argued, so that the attorneys arguing have the Constitution to stand on. I thought that's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of it.
It is. They have much stronger basis. But to me, the real point is that it's in the Constitution instead of a law, right? Laws can change very quickly.
Right. It's in the Constitution. But my point is, I just thought that when we're asking people to vote for this, they understand that it's broader than just government discrimination. And I think that would encourage more people to flip the ballot over and check Prop 1.
Yeah, I tell you transparently, Laura, when I talk to people in the streets, I don't mention I don't say framing just by the government. I say, do you want to expand rights for people on the basis of national age, sex, and
okay.
I don't say just by the government. I literally don't even use that language. I just say, do you want to
so then you imply that it's universal, which it pretty much is. Okay.
Yeah, I don't get into the nitty-gritty of what the ballot language is.
That's good. But I was always bothered by the script. I wrote a whole bunch of postcards out, and I was bothered by the fact that the script on the postcard limits it to government discrimination.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of clarity, but it's a really good point. It's 8:15. I don't know about y'all, but I came straight from work and I worked from 10 to 6 and I jumped right on here. Yeah. So I'm going to sign off in a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Key. And I would like to thank everybody here. And if you have any other ideas, come on. There are a bunch of people you can contact about your ideas on how to get the vote out, or if you would like some more information, if you would like any resources, If you want to sign up for one of Planned Parenthood's canvassing events, if you want to help out on the League of Women Voters ERA committee, we would love to have you. If you want to contact Key and find out what more you can do with the new Pride agenda, here's the contact info.
And we will be sending a link to this recording to everyone. So if you can't read it on your screen right now, it'll be there. And that should be there within a day or so. All right, I think this is a good stopping point. I would like to thank everyone for coming out. I continue to feel motivated and optimistic based on our wonderful discussion here and seeing all these faces, some of whom I know and some are new friends, you know, the strangers, the friends who I hadn't met yet are here. So thank you for joining us. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.